Steve Immerman goes by the name Steve when he's the artist and goes by Doctor when he's in surgery. And today, thankfully, all we need is the artist. He's quite the master when it comes to working with glass and has a well-founded reputation in that medium. Right now, his work is on display in the mezzanine gallery at the L.A. Phillips Memorial Public Library in Eau Claire. He's sharing space with Sandra Kress, whose weathered wood exhibit features digital photos enhanced. We tried to contact her but did not get a response. No problem, though, because Dr. Immerman provided more than enough conversation to work with. We got together at the library in the midst of his work, and I began by noting that he was a native of New York and asked about if art influenced him in early life.
Yes, it did. I spent a lot of time in the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a child because my grandfather would bring me there and his apartment was right across the street. I never really thought about art as a career, but I was always interested in school in art projects and craft projects. They fascinated me, and I never got enough of them.
When I read about his art avocation for glass, my first thought was surgeon. Good with his hands, sculpture makes sense. Then, to rob a phrase from the NFL, after further review, surgeon. Hands are important, working with sharp glass. Maybe plaster or clay might be safer.
As far as the dangers go, it's, the edges of the glass are sharp. All of the heat to melt the glass is done inside of a closed kiln that's computer programmed, and I don't open it to manipulate it. And working with the glass, the only time you seem to get cut is when you're reaching in and out of bins trying to pick up a piece. But once you have it in your hands, you're very careful and rarely will get cut.
Medicine was Immerman's first choice, but it appears art is now a close second. I wondered about when in his career it attained its lofty stature.
Even when I was a surgical resident, I was playing with stained glass, making windows, designing things. I found I really needed a creative outlet. And then once I came here and started a practice and started having children, things really got busy. And I went for several years really without having any kind of creative outlet at all. And in the mid-90s, I realized I really, really missed it, and I needed to find something, if for no other reason, as a stress reliever. And I didn't really want to go back to the stained glass because it had kind of run its course as far as I was concerned. And I had heard about this idea of melting glass in a kiln. And so I started investigating that. And it really became a bigger part of my life than I ever thought it would be. I just thought I'd be making ornaments or bowls or ashtrays in the basement, and then it would be a fairly solitary type of activity. But one day I had a piece that I had photographed, and it was on a website where other people who work in this medium display their work for each other to look at and enjoy. And it said next to it, for more information, contact the artist. And I emailed the guy who runs the website. I said, "What do you mean artist? I've never been called an artist before." He goes, "Well, now you're an artist." And he says, "I bet that was easier to get than your MD degree."
This type of work with glass is very time-consuming, yes?
It's a very slow, inefficient way of working with glass, but it lends itself to certain degrees of design that other glass forms will not allow you to do. The other ways of working with glass are, glass blowing, where you're taking molten glass out of a vat and manipulating it. Torch work, where you're working with glass on a rod using a torch to heat it up and manipulate it. Casting, where you pour molten glass into a mold. Stained glass, where you take cold glass, cut it into shapes, and let it together. This is kiln-formed glass or fused glass or kiln glass. It has a number of different names. With this, you take sheets of glass at room temperature, you cut them up, put them together into some sort of a construction, and then put that in a kiln and melt it so that it fuses together to be one solid piece of glass. We then still might take that and cut it up again, put it back in the kiln again, polish it, sandblast it, grind it, shape it. There's various things that we then would do with it.
That reminded me of one of my favorite questions for artists. How do you know when a piece is finished? The manipulating could go on and on and on.
With these pieces, there's a lot of planning that goes into them before you actually put them together. And so it's usually planned out to its final form from the very beginning. Certainly there are times you get partway through and you go, this is not looking the way I wanted it to. It's just not, it doesn't look in real life like it did in my head, and you may then change courses. But most of these, we start out with drawings and measurements. There's a lot of planning involved to get to the final product.
Is there a comfort level one reaches as an artist, or is it always a matter of finding more and better ways?
Always going after new techniques, new designs, new ideas, trying to infuse more meaning into the work.
Glass artist Steve Immerman is our guest. His bio lists his art as a hobby. Does that give the art enough recognition, enough stature? Is this something you can do only in your spare time, or is it important enough that you make time for it?
I do, because I enjoy it, and I think people can find time to do what they enjoy, and whether you call it a second job or a hobby or a passion or an obsession, this is something that I really do enjoy, and it helps me relax, and I feel very good when something beautiful comes out of the kiln. And I look at it and I enjoy it and I touch it and I hold it up to the light and I run upstairs and show it to my wife and I make all my kids look at it and I photograph it, and I really get a lot of enjoyment out of creating these things.
And from what I know about fused glass, sometimes what comes out of the kiln can be a surprise.
Yeah. A lot of these pieces that I create, I'm building them face down. So as I put them together, I'm not seeing the side that's going to show. Some of the glass that I use changes color once you fire it. It all definitely changes texture. The interface between the pieces of glass, everything about it changes. I can put something together and have a mental image of how it's going to end up based on, 15 years of experience of putting things in the kiln and taking them out. But yeah, sometimes you're surprised that it didn't do what you wanted. Sometimes you experiment and you don't know how it's going to turn out, and you're either disappointed or pleased with what you end up with.
And where does the commercial side of art come in? Is something created with the idea it has to look a certain way because it must be appealing for sale, or is it created for the artist first?
If you make something that you think other people are going to like and it doesn't mean much to you, it probably won't excite anyone else either. And so what I make are things that I am enjoying making, that I want to see come out of the kiln, that I'm excited about. But granted, if I want to keep making these, I need to get them out of the house somehow. So it's nice to make something that someone else will want. And so, the particular object is less important than the design that goes into it. Mm-hmm. Making a bowl is something people relate to very easily and can understand and would want to have. Some of the sculptural pieces, some people have a little trouble relating to as to what they would do with that. Do they really want that? Not everybody has any kind of sculpture in their home.
Immerman doesn't do a lot of exhibits, but does have his work at galleries across America. And because of that geographical distribution, the folks at UPS and FedEx must like this guy.
Shipping's my least favorite part of the process. Actually, the company that makes the glass that I use has a meeting every year where they teach various things. And one year they were teaching packing. And they actually had a competition where they gave groups of people a piece of glass and they said, you need to pack it so it could withstand shipping. It was thrown off a balcony that was about 30 feet off the ground, and then another 20-pound box was thrown on top of it, figuring that's about what it needs to be able to sustain in order to be shipped. And so everything I pack is packed in upholstery foam, double boxed. There's at least 4 inches of packing material between the edges of the glass and the outside world. And when I'm done packing it, I'm usually confident I could toss it down the stairs and really would not worry about it.
Kiln-formed glass artist Steve Immerman, Dr. Steve Immerman. In addition to the exhibit now up through January 10th at the Phillips Library, you can go to clearwaterglass.com. You'll find hundreds of photos of Immerman's work. Some pieces have found their way to the Janet Carson Gallery at the Eau Claire Regional Arts Center downtown as well.